Alicia. How are you today?
I'm good, Kate. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's Friday the 13th, so hopefully nothing crazy is happening in your world.
Hopefully, no tech issues on the call.
Well, let's hope so. But if they do happen, they happen to everybody. So I really appreciate you joining us today. I think you're going to be a really informative speaker for a lot of our clients who are, of course, self-employed and maybe are thinking about starting a team or hiring that first admin assistant or social media person. And so, as self-employed individuals, as you and I both are, I would love to have you sort of introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you've been doing in the last 10 years or so.
Great. First off, thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. So I started off working actually in my family business. That's actually where I was first exposed to bookkeeping for small businesses firsthand. And honestly, it just sort of intrigued me. I had a knack for it right away. And at the time, I was still trying to figure out, this is going back to high school. Still trying to figure out, what I was going to do after high school and sort of where I saw myself. And as soon as I had that opportunity with my father's business, I just knew instantly that was what I was going to do. I just really enjoyed it. I liked, the opportunity to work with businesses on that level, like very intimately, and get to know their business and their finances. And as I said, I had a knack for it. So I kind of knew very quickly that was what my career progression was going to be. So I went to school for it. And then I realized that, if I wanted to work with a variety of companies or businesses, that I was going to need a little more experience. So what I decided to do was go into corporate and put some experience under my belt, get, my feet wet, and then sort of go out on my own and do some freelancing. And I was fortunate enough to land with a company that was large but small enough where I sort of had my hands in everything. So, everything from finance to HR to, basically everything. It was a small business. So I sort of was the right hand to the CFO, and we kind of, managed the business together that way. So it gave me a really broad base for my experience, which was wonderful. And I was with them for a long time. And from then, decided to start a family. So went off, started having kids, and sort of moved into a hybrid work environment, which is very common now, but wasn't common at the time.
Right, absolutely.
And from there, it sort of just grew. It started off, as I said, with just some very close family and friends. And, one person tells another, and here we are today. So it really sort of blossomed while I was off, which was pretty perfect timing, really. It worked out exactly how it was supposed to. So, by the time my kids were school age and going back full time, or I should say going in full time, and I was going back full time, my work with my full-time employer was decreasing and my own business was ramping up substantially. And so I decided to sort of change gears and go out on my own. And here we are.
Absolutely. You mentioned something earlier about having gone into corporate workflow. So a company that was small, but not too small and big enough so that you had your hands in a whole bunch of different departments. How important do you think that was for your overall career development and where you are now as an entrepreneur?
Honestly, it was a tremendous influence. First off, the man that I worked for, we're still very, very close. He's like a mentor to me. So, and of course he had many years belt. And so he really kind of took me under his wing and showed me, what it was like. As I said, I came from an entrepreneurial family, so I was already exposed to it quite a bit. And I always had that entrepreneurial spirit in me. As a result of my family having their own business. So I think that, me already having those tools within me and seeing that firsthand, what it was like for my family to run the business, it translates even today, like a lot of people that shift from corporate to having their own business, it's a very difficult transition to go from being an employee to an employer.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a whole different ball game, not just, the whole business aspect of it, running it, creating it, all of the things that go along with that. But really, it's just the mindset of, switching from being an employee, this is my job, I clock in at this time, clock out, to being a business owner. And so I always kind of had that mentality in me. And I find even today when I'm speaking with my clients and advising them on their businesses, it's a very useful perspective because I see very much both sides of that fence. And I think it allows me to bring a very valuable perspective in that regard. So the experience there was, priceless, to be honest, because as I said, it really did give me a broad spectrum of experience. And then, as I said, it just sort of layered really well on top of what I was already, grown up with. So I was fortunate.
For sure. And I think it definitely helps having examples of entrepreneurs in your family. You see the struggles too. And I think you're a lot more mentally prepared for going through challenges and having, months that aren't sometimes going very well, right? Where you don't have new clients coming in. But it also teaches you a lot of resilience, and it teaches you how to hopefully create a really steady stream of clients that continue coming back to you or referring you to other friends and family and colleagues and things like that. So I definitely think that piece is really, really important. You mentioned that you quickly discovered that you had a knack for bookkeeping and something that was not very natural to you. I don't want to stereotype, but I know you're sort of not a typical bookkeeper. You're very personable and lovely to be around. Not that I don't enjoy being around other bookkeepers. But, and I think that's something that you've alluded to before is, working for this company that you worked for in the past, you've kind of touched on a whole bunch of different things, including human resources, of course. Payroll ties into bookkeeping, and that's where you and I actually have met each other sort of on the cross paths of bookkeeping and HR. And so tell me a little bit about some of the services that your company regularly offers to clients, but then also some of the other things, like some of the projects that you and I work on together, where you partner up with a third party HR or a third party business consultant or whatever it is. Or I know you're very well versed in business, so you're able to also advise clients on a lot of these things as well. So let's talk a little bit about your business and the scope of clients that you support, the size of businesses, the kinds of things that you help them with.
Yeah. So, bookkeeping means a lot of different things to different people. It really depends on the size of the business, right? So, for some companies, they don't even have a bookkeeper because they're small. They just manage their books themselves. A lot of them manage mainly from their bank account based on cash flow. And then obviously other businesses are much larger. They have, full scale teams of employees and things like that. So it really depends on the type of business. I think when we get into larger clients, it's particularly more important just because there are more moving parts, right? As I mentioned, obviously the employees, the payroll compliance, things like that, HST registrations and filings, obviously, corporate tax returns, things like that. So it really sort of depends on the business, but as I said, there are a lot of facets to bookkeeping. So I try to work with clients, based on what they need for their business. Most clients that are producing invoices as a result of their sales, they would like to continue doing that themselves. So then I just provide all the auxiliary bookkeeping around that, right? So I'll help oversee the accounts receivable and invoicing, making sure that obviously it's being done accurately and that their collections are in good standing. But, a lot of my clients too, I'll help with accounts payable and, write their checks, pay their bills, make sure suppliers are paid on time, things like that. I have clients in the construction industry where there's a lot of progress payments happening. They have an estimate from a supplier, and as the job is progressing, they want to make sure that those payments are being tracked properly so they know that they're not overpaying or double paying. Things like that, right? And then, obviously all the in and outs from the bank account, revenue and expenses, all the boring stuff that goes along with bookkeeping. But all the very important, basic components that need to be managed on a regular basis, and just making sure that the books are straight. And as I said, that, tax compliance is obviously a huge thing too. As you mentioned, you and I cross paths on the HR and payroll side of things. And so again, depending on the size of the team, I don't go into, I won't go as far as to help with job postings and hiring and screening as much as you, but for sure, there's definitely a lot of questions and advice that comes up around hiring and tax compliance and payroll and withholdings and all of that. So, as I said, depending on, those services are going to vary, but I try to, offer a full cycle product where, if a client wants to be involved in their books, I'm certainly open to it as long as they're properly trained, which I also will do if, as required. But I don't like to have too many hands in the pot or too many cooks in the kitchen, as I like to call it, because sometimes that leads to more errors than you would think, and it's more timely for me to go in and actually correct those problems. So as I said, I'm happy to collaborate with the business owners and things like that, but I like to make sure that the proper training's in place so that they understand how to use the software and there's no issues there, mistakes being made, and everything's functioning properly and reconciling at the end of the month. And I have a lot of clients. Most of my clients are just like, I don't want to do anything.
That's me. I'm one of those
Just do
clients.
it all.
I will issue invoices and make sure that they're paid. That's about it.
Yeah. They don't want to, they want to know very little. They want to do as little as possible. So again, it really depends on the business owner. I try to be flexible, and provide the service that they're really looking for, right? I don't want to push people into, a service that they feel like they can do themselves, but certainly I'm here to support around, like, as I said, all the other parts of the bookkeeping that maybe they're unaware of or they're not doing or they don't want.
Yeah. And this is something I know I've shared with you before, but I'm sure people will find this hilarious. As a new entrepreneur at the time I decided that I wanted to do my own books. I was capable. It can't possibly be all that difficult.
Yeah.
And so, if other people can do it, I can do it too. And at the time I didn't have a whole lot of clients. So I thought, this is something I'm going to take a crack at it. And I think within 3 months, I ended up owing the CRA something like $7,200. I wasn't very happy about it. And I couldn't figure out why. I sat there, I cried for a while because it made me feel like I failed. Having just started a business, I had already failed. And so, and then I called, I asked somebody for a recommendation for a local bookkeeper, and somebody was kind enough to provide one for me. And then they figured all of this out and cleared it up. And I think in a matter of a few hours between myself, the CRA, because of course we give access to them to access our business account, and everything was fine again. And so after that experience, I had decided to never touch my books again, and let somebody else, let the professionals do their job, right, and just run my business. And I have to say, it's been such a weight off my shoulders, because there are so many moving pieces. It's not just about invoices. It's about government remittances, and of course your income taxes, your personal, your business, your everything. It's even things like ROEs, right? Records of employment. My bookkeeper is kind enough to take all of that weight off my shoulders and make sure that that's all being done, because you can get in some serious trouble, of course, with the CRA for not issuing things like that on time and for not filing things like that on time. So I certainly don't recommend to do what I've done unless you come from a financial background, and hire a professional to do the work. I know you probably have, I'm sure you do, as any entrepreneur does, pushback from potential clients whenever you're going through the service packages, pushback on cost, right? Cost of services. And that's the main reason why everybody thinks that they can do it themselves. From experience, I can certainly say that it's more of an investment rather than a cost, and a savings of a whole lot of heartache and stress. What would you say to that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think that's, probably one of the biggest misconceptions. And I think, as you mentioned, one of the largest objections, not necessarily about price, just I think the first step is actually admitting that you need somebody, right? That you need the help and that you want the help. I know a lot of, entrepreneurs, small business owners, people just getting off the ground. When you're starting up, there's always upfront costs, whether it's, equipment, overhead, staff, whatever it is, depending on the business. There are tons of costs. Even just incorporating is costly, right? So I understand that, initially it takes some time to get to that decision. Most people don't come to me like right out the gate. Although I do have, clients that do come to me and they're like, I haven't even incorporated yet. I'm incorporating this month. I want to get somebody in place right away. I applaud them. That's great. But for a lot of people, cost is an objection for sure. Like it's a factor. Absolutely. And so, they want to get their business off the ground. And most of them, to be honest, even if they are mentally prepared to go there with a bookkeeper, it's the last thing.
What do you mean by being mentally prepared to go there with a bookkeeper?
Mentally prepared, I mean that in a few ways. As I said, number one, you touched upon it, is just like, I can do this. I can do this myself. I'm the business owner. I want to have a handle on my finances. I want to know the ins and outs of my business. And so they feel like they have to take this on because, it's for the greater good of my business. I should understand. I should know this stuff. I hear that a lot. And as I said, not wrong. Just that's, I think the first thing is just sort of, being mentally prepared to invite somebody in, relinquish control, delegate is a huge, thing for business owners. So that's the first thing. Second thing is people are very funny about their money. Very funny, very private matter. Some people, as you said, feel like, they're failing, or they don't have a lot of money in the bank, or they should have more, or they don't have a lot of sales, or whatever it is. We all have our insecurities and our things that we get down about, but people are very private about their finances. And so, here I come, and I may or may not know you. Sometimes if I know you, it's worse. I'm looking at your bank accounts. I see every transaction coming in and out. I see your credit card, spending.
Are you judging? Are you secretly judging?
I don't judge. This is the thing. I think it's really interesting. Being in the business that I'm in, honestly, it sounds funny to say it, but they're numbers on a page. Like, it's just I don't want to say it's just my job, but I'm so like numb to it because I just look at numbers all day long.
Medical precision almost, right?
Yeah, it's not about like, I'm not going, oh, wow, that was a big restaurant bill, or, oh, wow, they eat out a lot, or they don't tip very much. I'm honestly not passing judgment at all. It's literally just numbers on a page for me. I'm like, I gotta, get through these transactions and get through this data. So it's nothing like that. But people have that misconception that that's what's happening, right? You're letting them into their life. You're opening up your bank accounts to somebody. It's a scary thing. It can be very scary for a lot of people. And privacy is a huge, huge factor. I would say sometimes more than cost, depending on the person, right? So confidentiality and privacy is huge. And reputation is everything in my business. So, I take it very seriously, and, I try to put people that have those kind of misconceptions at ease so that they can, ultimately delegate that task. As you said, it's something that business owners, they initially want to take on, but if you're fortunate to have some success, I think you realize pretty quickly that, okay, this is something that I don't have to do. It's something that maybe you want to do, but it's not really something that you have to do. It's an easy piece of the puzzle to break out that won't detract from your business. And ultimately, it just allows you to focus more energy and time on your own business, whether it's sales, service, product, doesn't matter what you're doing or what needs your attention, because there's always 1,000 things that need your attention, right? So it really doesn't matter. It's just about reallocating your time and energy in a more efficient way and productive way for your business, right? So I think once people see it that way, as you said, it becomes more of an investment as opposed to a cost.
One of the exercises I get my clients to do, before they decide to hire anybody or outsource any tasks to any consultant or any other service provider, is to calculate what their time is worth, right? So what it is that they make an hour, what it is that they're hoping to be making an hour sometime by the end of this year, and realize that for something like bookkeeping, for example, it's going to take me literally probably 5 times longer to achieve the same amount of result as it will take you. And so where is my time better spent? And is it really truly a cost, right? At that point, it becomes definitely more of an investment than a cost, for sure.
What I like to say is, it's not so much what my time is worth. What's your time worth? Because as you said, it will take you twice as long, maybe 3 times as long, and I will probably have to fix it.
Right.
I mean, like I said, good intentions are there, but not always, the best application of your time, for sure.
The best results. Yeah, absolutely. I know I get asked a lot of questions that I think are actually more appropriate for someone like yourself who deals with a lot of payroll. So we get a lot of clients who are either first-time employers or maybe have gone through somebody like a family member who's been employed but not really employed, who's been on an independent contractor agreement, and now they're looking to break out of that cycle and hire somebody on proper payroll. And so what I get asked a lot is sort of, what are the hidden costs, right? If I'm hiring somebody on a $50,000 salary, what costs am I not seeing right off the bat, right? And so, and I know there's all kinds of calculators online. The CRA has a calculator as well. But let's talk a little bit about the costs of the hidden costs, as they call them, of having employees.
Well, I think you can speak to the first thing that comes to my mind, which is just the actual time spent finding, screening, hiring, and then ultimately training. That's a huge cost. Just human capital to actually sit with somebody and physically train them, right? So you could probably speak better to that, because that's a little bit more your domain. But certainly, if you're looking at payroll, there are many softwares out there. A lot of them are built into the accounting softwares. But most of them come with a cost. Even though it's built into your accounting software, they usually charge extra for it. And so that's the first thing, is there are payroll processing fees to be aware of. And as I said, they do vary from company to company. One thing I will say is, working with a preferred partner like myself, I do receive discounts from many of the major companies just because of the volume that we do. So I like to pass those savings through to my clients. Otherwise, they could just go direct themselves, right? So I try to pass those through as best I can. That's the first thing. The second thing is as you mentioned, the source deductions, right? So there's CPP and EI, which have to be matched. And the employer, pays those out of pocket. If you're, over $1 million in payroll, there's also EHT, which for small businesses is not usually a factor, but, depending on the size of the team, again, that's a cost. And then there's also WSIB, depending on the industry that you're in, right? So WSIB is an insurance for the workers in case there's an injury on site. And depending on the risk involved in the business that you run, that rate goes up. You're assigned a rate based on the industry per $100 of earnings, and that's another compliance piece that you have to file a return and pay your premiums on a regular basis. So just off the bat, there are those things right there, and then as I mentioned, there's the soft costs like the training and the actual hiring. Right?
Yeah, absolutely, and all of these are important for employers to know, I think, beforehand. And again, these are mandatory, that we cannot avoid them, right? We have the Employment Standards Act, of course, and we have the legal guidelines for payroll, and you really can't get away from any of that. So that is something.
Yeah. Go ahead. Another thing you mentioned is also the vacation pay, statutory holiday pay, premium time, overtime. All of the things that, make fair working conditions for employees in Ontario, right? So those are all kind of above and beyond, right?
Yeah, and I know obviously that really kind of scares a lot of people and deters them from doing a proper employment contract, proper fees that we remit to the government and things like that. And of course, all of these wonderful things you just mentioned, like vacation pay, which we all quite enjoy when we're employed by somebody else. But that's not something we want to pay usually as employers, right? So, however, with that being said, though, touching on the recruitment piece, it is a value proposition at the end of the day. So, what I say to my clients, it's yes, absolutely, you're going to be paying more, and that is a part of being an employer. again, we can't really get away from that. But what you're offering your employees stability, you're offering them protection, you're offering them all of the proper structures to make sure that if something happens to them, in the case of an insurance claim or something like that, they are protected. They have all of the various leaves, such as maternity leave. I mean, we're both mothers. We know how important that is, right? To have, and taking care of our children or a sick family member or something like that. Those are all really, really important. And so I think particularly for my clients, because they are generally speaking small business entities, they try to sometimes work around some of these structures. I definitely urge not to. I think it makes you a lot more attractive as an employer, which makes my job easier. And at the end of the day, costs you, less in my fees. And probably in general, it creates a lower turnover rate, right? So you're not hiring, recruiting, training, onboarding, terminating, and then all over again multiple times throughout the year, right? So you sort of, you're, what is the expression? Penny wise, dollar stupid, I think is.
Yeah. There's also, a risk, as you mentioned, like when people try to sort of skirt around some of these additional costs, or as you said, bringing somebody on with a proper employment contract, you are leaving yourself, liable, right? I mean, if ultimately the CRA says if the employee doesn't file their taxes, if they're not claiming the income that they're earning from you and the CRA finds out about it, they will come back to the employer looking for those taxes. You can't get blood from a stone. If the employee's already spent the money, the CRA is going to be looking for it from someone, I should say. And certainly they'll be looking for the employer's portion of the CPP and EI. Never mind penalties and interest and everything else. So there is definitely some liability there for sure.
Absolutely. And to add to that as well, from an HR standpoint, if you're ever terminating a contractor who doesn't believe that they should have ever been a contractor and takes you to court for those unpaid vacation days and unpaid statutory holidays, if the court finds them to be a dependent contractor as opposed to an independent contractor, you will be on the hook to pay for all of it. Never mind the fact that you're probably going to be heavily fined for violations of different contractual, trying to get around the CRA. Again, they don't really like that.
No.
And at the end of the day, it just, I think it's better I always believe that it's better to run your business clean and make sure that everything is literally by the book, so that you don't end up encountering any issues down the road. And so I'm very grateful for professionals like yourself, and for my wonderful bookkeeper as well, to be able to make sure that they take care of things like that and advise me. I know you've mentioned something earlier that kind of caught my ear. You've mentioned that obviously sometimes you're looking at the reports and people's finances and things like that, whether they're, somebody that you already know or you don't. Do you ever actually advise them on maybe some of the things where they could be saving on costs, or maybe there's duplications of similar expenses, or is it sort of just straightforward, very much of, here's your report and you're the one making decisions?
No. So I like to give my clients some options again around the type of service that they want, or I should say, let's say the quality of the service, right? So some people are just looking for, straightforward bookkeeping. As I said, they want little involvement. They rather not hear from you very often. They just really want the numbers done for the accountant at the end of the year for their tax return. Other people, and then, from there I offer a range, right? I offer semi-annually, quarterly, and monthly financials. So, but it is a common question that I get where, regardless of how frequently they get their reporting, they want to know, you're looking at books all the time.
Right.
You're looking at all kinds of companies. Are these numbers in line? Is this accurate? Like, am I paying too much for insurance? Am I not? So I do get those questions often, for sure. And, I do my best to advise them based on, my knowledge and experience, for sure. And if I see anything, that seems out of whack, or that I need to flag to them, like 100%, I'm going to tell them about it. I can't tell you how many times I've caught things that, had they not had a bookkeeper, I know they probably wouldn't have caught themselves, like just checks clearing the bank twice, things like that, because now everybody takes a picture of their checks on the phone, right? So they'll take a picture, it'll go through the bank, and then they'll throw it in a drawer, and then they find it 6 months later, and they're like, "Oh, I never cashed this. I'm going to take another picture," and it will go through again. Yeah, it will, because not like in the old days where you had to walk up to the machine or walk up to a teller and actually like give them your check or put it in the machine, and then it was gone. Right now, as I said, there's not that physical check and balance anymore. So things like that, where employees have cashed check twice, or even checks that aren't getting cashed. Things like suppliers or automatic payments, duplicates that are coming out all the time, especially with the subscriptions. People like subscribe to everything now, right? And then
I'm one of those people.
The streaming service, you watch the show you want to watch, and then you forget to call and cancel Crave or whatever it is, right? And so I see all the time people will have multiple Amazon accounts, multiple subscriptions. So stuff like that, where if you're really not looking, it could be problematic, and it can add up. So things like that, definitely keeping my eye out for all the time. But certainly I do get questions all the time from clients about are my numbers in line? Are my costs in line? What do you think? And of course, that's part of the service that we offer, right? Is just trying to give them the best advice that we can, and if it helps them sort of whether it's lean out or focus more attention on sales, or whatever it is that we can spot. That's what those monthly, quarterly, annually, semi-annually check-ins, like they're very valuable, because most people, as I said, even if you're doing it yourself, you don't necessarily know what to be looking for, and you're probably doing it just because you have to do it.
Right.
You're just getting through it. You're not really pausing to sit down and be like, okay, what does this mean, right? Well, what's the financial health check on this business, right? And a lot of people don't even know how to read statements. So it's helpful. People really appreciate
amazing
that.
Wow, that's fantastic. And I know you have your sort of your preferred accountants and things like that you can also recommend to your clients when it's time for that annual filing.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I work with a number of really great accountants, and they provide a tremendous amount of support to me as well, right? I mean, tax is a whole different beast, and as much as I like to think that I understand about it, there are things changing all the time, as I'm sure you're aware, similar in the HR world. And so, it takes a lot, and it's a whole separate profession just to be on top of the tax law and, all the changes and the ways that, they can help, defer tax, or, all the strategies around that. Particularly when you have an incorporated business, and then you're filing a personal tax return as well as a corporate tax return. A good accountant they provide a lot of really, really valuable insight around, compensation strategy and tax strategy and planning and all that kind of thing. So I work with great accountants. I work with a lot of professionals in the insurance industry, wealth advisors, all kinds of, partners, now yourself, HR. So, I'm constantly adding, collaborators to my roster to be able to, add additional value to the clients, right? If they're looking to bring people on and they need a group benefit plan for, or a health spending account, or, there's always a variety of things that come up, right? So,
amazing. I mean, I'm sure your clients all really enjoy working with you, and it sounds like you've got a really great network of professionals that you leverage to make sure that you bring the best experience to your clients, sort of from all angles, really. So I am extremely grateful to have met you and sort of partnered up with you now. I know we're going to be working together for many years to come. I hope this session was helpful to many of our viewers. And thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy woman.
Oh, that's okay. As I said, I appreciate the opportunity. And, as you said, I look forward to working with you in the future as well. And, hopefully utilizing your services myself and, just growing this relationship. So thank you again.
Thank you so much. Have a great weekend.